I still wanna run to you.
If you were raised by a narcissistic mother, one of the most painful parts of the aftermath is this. You often struggle more to speak about the abuse than the abuser ever struggled to commit it. And that alone can make you question yourself, can make you carry profound shame that wasn't even yours to carry. You ask, why is this still so hard to name? Why do I feel ashamed talking about what happened to me in my childhood? Why do I still protect the person who harmed me repeatedly? Why do I carry the secrecy, the guilt, the ugliness, and the confusion? Why do I feel like I am the one covered in something dark, dirty, when it was never mine to begin with? And maybe the deepest question of all, how can a mother hate her own daughter? How can a woman bring a child into the world and then bully her, compete with her, shame her, invalidate her, diminish her, sabotage her, or emotionally feed off of her pain? How is that even possible? If this is your story, I want to say something clearly at the beginning. The shame you carry is not proof that you deserved what happened. It is evidence of how deeply you were conditioned to hold what your mother could not bear within herself. That is different. Very different. And until that distinction becomes clear within the body, in the psyche, and in the soul, many daughters of narcissistic mothers keep walking around wearing emotional bloodstains that never, ever belonged to them. The shame wore them down, and it was never, ever theirs to carry. They are carrying the mother's shame, the mother's envy, the mother's cruelty, the mother's split, the mother's refusal, the mother's false image, the mother's secret life, the mother's self-hatred. And because it was handed to you in childhood, you mistook it for identity. That was one of the deepest injuries, because abuse from a narcissistic mother is not only painful, it is disorienting, it can be debilitating. It disturbs the child's relationship with truth itself. A child is wired to attach to the mother. A child's nervous system is built around the assumption that mother equates safety. Mother is regulation. Mother is belonging. Mother is mirror. Mother is home. So when the very person who is supposed to delight in your existence instead humiliates you, resents you, manipulates you, invades you, bullies you or attacks your essence, the child is left with an impossible reality because the child cannot easily conclude, my mother is unsafe. That truth threatens survival. So instead, the child concludes, there must be something wrong with me. That is the bargain. That is the original spiritual injury inflicted upon the child from their very own mother. The child would rather believe she is defective than face the annihilating reality that the person she depends on is incapable of real love. So the psyche makes an adaptation. It bends, it fractures around truth, it protects attachment at the cost of selfhood. And this is why so many adult daughters of narcissistic mothers struggle to talk about the abuse, even decades later. You kept her secrets for so long, and it's very uncomfortable when you initially start talking about it. Because silence was never just silence, it was a survival strategy. Secrecy was not weakness, it was loyalty fused with fear. The child learned very early that the truth was dangerous when it came to their family. Maybe if you told the truth, you were called dramatic. Maybe if you cried, you were mocked. Maybe if you confronted the cruelty, it was denied. Maybe if you named what happened, you were punished. You were sent away. Maybe if you ran away to escape the abuse, they lied about you and said you were the problem. Maybe history was rewritten. Maybe your mother smiled in public and turned very cruel in private. Maybe no one else saw it. Maybe everyone saw it and still failed to protect you. That creates a very specific type of psychic torment. Because when abuse is obvious, at least reality has edges. But narcissistic abuse often happens through inversion. You are hurt, but told you are too sensitive and to suck it up. Perhaps you were told children should be seen and not ever heard. You are violated, but told you are selfish. You are reacting to cruelty, but told you are the issue. You're scapegoated, but told you're the problem. You're carrying grief, but told you're unstable. You are telling the truth, but we're treated like the dangerous one, the unstable one, the sick one. That does not just create pain, it creates internal exile. And many daughters grow up with an inner world organized around this very distortion. They become hyper aware of other people's moods, hyper responsible, hyper vigilant, hyper intuitive, but afraid to trust their own intuition. Deeply empathic, but disconnected from their own needs. Capable of reading a room in seconds. unable to rest inside themselves. Because in homes like this, the daughter is not allowed to simply be. She is trained to monitor, to anticipate, to soften, to explain, to absorb, to carry, to disappear when necessary, to perform the version of herself most likely to reduce backlash and abuse. And over time, this becomes a personality structure, not your essence, a structure. That distinction matters because many daughters think, this is just who I am. I'm anxious, I'm ashamed, I'm too much, too sensitive, I'm hard to love, I'm damaged. My own mother can't even love me. I'm the black sheep, I'm the unstable one, I'm the difficult one. If I wasn't so difficult, maybe my mother would love me. No, not at all. Often what they are calling personality is a trauma adaptation built in a relational war zone that happened every single day of your childhood. A child cannot stabilize a mother's unprocessed shame, so she stores it. And this is where it gets very deep. A narcissistic mother often cannot tolerate her own inadequacy, dependency, vulnerability, envy, aging, grief, emptiness, or self-hatred. Those states feel unbearable to her. So instead of processing them, she puts them on you. It is projected outward because she cannot be honest with herself. And if the daughter is sensitive, open, empathic, intuitive, or emotionally porous, she becomes the ideal vessel for her mother's shame. The mother unconsciously deposits her shame to the daughter over and over again and treats the daughter as if she is the carrier of all that is unacceptable, even when it's not even the daughter's stuff. So that daughter becomes the problem, the selfish one, the dramatic one, the unstable one, difficult one, the crazy one, the spoiled one, the one who always turns everything into an issue. But what is often happening underneath is that the daughter is carrying the disowned material that never, ever belonged to her. This is why daughters of narcissistic mothers often feel shame without clear evidence. It sits in the body like a fog, like contamination, like guilt without a crime, like badness without reason, like a heaviness that follows them into adulthood, relationships, spirituality, sexuality, creativity, visibility, and self-expression. And because this shame was installed before language fully formed, it often feels ancient. You do not just think it, you feel it as atmosphere. You feel it when speaking up or attempting to exercise your throat chakra. You feel it when receiving love. You feel it when being seen. You feel it when succeeding. You feel it when resting. You feel it when setting boundaries. You feel it when choosing yourself or when outgrowing the family role, when becoming beautiful, when becoming powerful, when becoming free. You feel it, especially when you become free, because freedom exposes the lie. And narcissistic mothers often do not react well when the daughter begins to separate from the identity she was assigned. Why? Because narcissistic mothers do not see their daughters clearly. They relate to daughters through using them, controlling them, treating them as if they're a companion, or perhaps using them just for scapegoating or projection. Sometimes the daughter is treated like an extension, sometimes like a servant, sometimes like an emotional spouse, sometimes like a doll, sometimes like competition, sometimes like a dumping ground, sometimes like a mirror the mother wants to smash. And many daughters ask the question with tears in their eyes, does my mother hate me? That question is so heartbreaking because every child wants the answer to be no. But many daughters have to grieve a brutal truth. What was directed at you may not have been simple hate in the ordinary sense. It may have been perpetual envy, possessiveness, rage at your separateness, rage at your innocence, rage at your vitality, rage at your sensitivity, rage at the qualities in you she had long buried within herself. Rage that you were your own person. Rage that you reflected back to her what she could not ever become in this lifetime. Rage that you needed things she had no capacity to give. And yes, sometimes that can feel exactly like hate, especially to a child. Because children do not experience abuse in abstract clinical terms. They experience it in the body as terror, as confusion, as collapse, as longing, as humiliation, as the ache of never being able to earn tenderness from the very person who should have offered it freely. And something else happens here that is deeply spiritual, but may take many years to recognize. When a mother repeatedly shames, mocks, controls, or psychologically invades her daughter, the daughter often becomes estranged, not only from her emotions, but from her own inner knowing. Her intuition gets attacked. Her reality gets attacked. Her right to name what she feels gets attacked. Her perception gets attacked. Her sovereignty is not even allowed to exist. So one of the effects of narcissistic mother abuse is a split from the soul. not because the soul leaves, but because the pathway to it gets covered over by a lot of muck that you might know as fear, shame, and survival conditioning. Many women later describe this as feeling spiritually muted, foggy, lost, disconnected, dirty, chronically guilty, unable to trust themselves, unable to hear their own guidance without second guessing, unable to fully inhabit their gifts because visibility feels dangerous, unable to believe in divine love because the first face of love was domination and destruction. This is one reason healing this wound is not just psychological, it is spiritual reclamation. Because the daughter is not only healing symptoms, she is recovering her original signal. She is recovering the self beneath distortion, the voice beneath silencing, the truth beneath gaslighting, the innocence beneath contamination, the life force beneath suppression, the soul beneath the family spell. And I use that word intentionally, spell, because narcissistic family systems often function like closed, energetic worlds where reality is manipulated to preserve the image of the narcissistic parent. Everyone is expected to orbit the mother's needs, moods, narratives, violence, appearances, drug addiction, wine, and of course the good old denials. Truth becomes dangerous. Authenticity becomes threatening. Differentiation becomes betrayal. And if you are the daughter who sees clearly, feels deeply, and eventually begins to speak, you often become the carrier of the family's projected darkness. The scapegoat, the one assigned to hold what the system refuses to face. And scapegoating is a profound spiritual violence because it places collective shadow onto one person and then punishes them for collapsing under its weight. That daughter often spends years, sometimes decades, trying to cleanse herself of something that was never hers. She overheals, she overexplains, overgives, overachieves, overfunctions, overapologizes, overspiritualizes. She tries to become so good, so kind, so helpful, so self-aware, so forgiving that maybe finally the shame will leave. But shame does not leave through self-punishment. It leaves through truth. It leaves when you begin to say, this was done to me. This was put on me. This was trained into me. This was projected onto me. This was never my essence. And for many daughters, that truth comes with grief, so deep it feels bottomless. Because healing from a narcissistic mother is not only about anger, it is about mourning. Mourning the mother you never had. Mourning the mother you needed. Mourning the childhood that you did not get. Mourning the softness that was absent. Mourning the delight that never came. Mourning the safety that should have been natural. Mourning all the years you spent carrying her darkness like it was your name. That grief, it matters. Because many daughters try to skip straight to empowerment, but real empowerment is often built on top of processed grief that has honestly been seen, felt, and honored. And as that grief moves, something sacred begins to happen. You start to realize, I was never too much. I was standing in the blast radius of someone who could not bear herself. I was not hard to love. I was loved by someone who did not know how to love without control, violence, screaming, and more. I was not born shameful. I was trained to carry shame because someone else refused to carry her own. I was not crazy. I was reacting sanely to insanity. I was not weak because I stayed silent. I was a child protecting my attachment. I was not spiritually broken. My spirit was covered over by survival and trauma. And now it is returning. That is where the healing turns. It's not when the past disappears. It's not when you get the apology. It's not when the mother suddenly understands. It's not when the family validates what happened. They're not going to. But when your soul stops waiting for permission to finally tell the truth, that is a holy threshold. And I want to say something to the daughters who still feel ashamed speaking about their mothers. I completely understand. The shame is not evidence that you are lying. Often, it is an evidence that you are getting close to the truth that was forbidden. Silence was your adaptation, but it does not have to be your future. You are allowed to name cruelty, even when it came from your own mother. You are allowed to grieve. You are allowed to grieve what never was. You are allowed to feel rage without becoming cruel or vicious. You are allowed to stop protecting someone who never protected you. You are allowed to release inherited shame. You are allowed to become visible. You are allowed to trust your perception. You are allowed to become the woman your childhood did not make room for. And if part of you still asks, why do I carry my mother's shame? Why do I carry her secrets? Because you were trained to carry what she disowned. But you do not have to carry it forever. You can set it down. Healing is not learning how to hold it better. Healing is learning how to put it down. Slowly, honestly, sacredly. And if you are in that season right now, I need you to hear me. Your mother's inability to love you well is not a verdict on your worth. Her bullying did not define your essence. Her envy did not cancel your beauty. Her projections did not rewrite your soul. Her shame is not your identity. Her darkness is not your destiny. You were never meant to become the container for another person's unhealed pain. You were meant to become yourself. And for many daughters, that becoming begins the moment they stop asking, what is wrong with me? And start asking, what was placed on me that I am now ready to return to the sender? That is when the psyche starts to reorganize. That is when the nervous system begins to soften. That is when spirituality becomes embodied rather than performed or chased. That is when self-trust starts to rebuild. That is when the inner child begins to feel less alone and less fearful. That is when the daughter stops living as the mother's emotional landfill and begins living as a sovereign woman again. And that journey is not quick, but it is so very sacred, because every layer of shame you release makes more room for truth and light. Every truth you name makes more room for the prime creator. Every boundary you set makes room for self-respect. Every tear you allow makes more room for tenderness. Every false identity you shed makes more room for the soul you actually are. I am Kat Grace. If this has found you at the exact moment you needed it, let this be your reminder. You are not carrying proof of your unworthiness. You are carrying the residue of what happened. And residue can be cleared. Distortion can be named. Shame can be released. Shame can be returned to the original sender. Truth can be restored. The soul can come back online, not as fantasy, not as spiritual bypass, but as lived reality and embodiment. And maybe that is the real work now. Not becoming someone new, but releasing everything that was never yours so you can finally meet the beautiful woman underneath it all. That woman is still here. She did not disappear. She survived. And I'm so very proud of you. I know it has not been easy. She survived, and now she is ready to come out of hiding. If this spoke to your experience, share in the comments with one word: released, seen, truth, or returning. You are not alone, and you are not who your mother said you were. Until next time, namaste.